Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. I heard a friend of mine's name being brought up on Sunday with the Talking Heads as Karl Rove. They had Governor Strickland on, and Governor Strickland is a guy who has been chasing Chris Christie around the country right now, kind of shadowing him, so to speak, and has been talking about keeping an eye on him because he's been lying and so forth. Karl Rove got on there with Strickland the other day and basically started to say, well, when Joe the Plumber came out, you leaked information on him, and people went after him because of that. So what's the difference? With us this morning is a guy that many of you know as Joe the Plumber. He's Joe Wurzelbacher, and he's with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Hey, doing great today, brother.
Hey, it's good to have you back on. So your name came up over the weekend again. I mean, it comes up from time to time anyway. And did you ever think your name, Joe the Plumber, would become part of our American lexicon?
No, never.
But over the weekend, Karl Rove stood up and said, who told your employment commissioner, to do what she did? She leaked confidential information, damaging information about Joe the Plumber was leaked to the press. Did you ever hear much about that story? Did you ever hear how that all came down?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even followed it a little while. Helen Jones-Kelly is the lady's name who was heading up that department at the time, and her and two other employers, she was actually able to resign, but two of the other, her subordinates, if you will, were actually fired. Since that time, Helen Jones-Kelly came back and got another job with the state down towards Dayton, heading up some kind of mental health institute. So, I mean, the lady already, shown that she is willing to disregard the rules, and yet, a year and a half, 2 years later, she gets another state job, and she'll be in charge of those records. So, I mean, who's she going to destroy next, or try to destroy next?
Yeah, I mean, this idea that you're going to take public records and destroy someone, and they didn't destroy you. In fact, I think they probably raised you up to another level, and you were out there, and you've done pretty well over the years on getting the word out to people. But when that happened to you, I mean, what was your attitude? What did you do?
Well, I mean, a lot of the information was incorrect, and half the records didn't really show a full thing. I mean, part of it was they said I was behind in child support payment. Obviously, they wanted to paint me as a bad person.
Right.
But, the truth of the deal was I actually had custody of my son. So how can you be behind in child support payment yet have custody of your own child? And, of course, media, CNN, MSNBC, they'll take the first thing that they hear or make it up if they have to try to belittle and besmirch somebody, and that's what they did. They didn't come in here and, they don't want to uphold somebody and say, yeah, this guy's actually a pretty good guy. And, they want to destroy me so that, my question was no longer valid. And, my question to Barack Obama about spreading the wealth around, that hurt him, and they had to come to bat for him, and they were going to do it any means necessary.
Yeah, people don't like when somebody else has an opposite opinion here, I guess, and you certainly raised a question. I don't think you were disrespectful. I mean, I've seen the tape. You weren't disrespectful that day when you saw him on the lawn there. You just basically said, hey, by the way, what's going on? You had a chance, and I've asked this, I know, every time, so forgive me, and you probably get asked ad nauseum, but you stood and looked in a man's eyes, and you asked him a question, and what did you see coming back at you?
Like I said before in the next interview afterwards, his answer was about as un-American as you get. All our lives, you and me, the people listening to this now, have been told if you work hard, you can succeed in America. And yet here, President Obama, then Senator Obama, wanted to penalize people for working hard and succeed. If you succeed too much, we're going to take more from you to give to people who, don't work, who want to sit there with their hand out, that like entitlements. And since then, I mean, President Obama has definitely been the entitlement president.
Joe, I don't want to call you Joe the Prophet now, but a lot of people look back at that moment and they say, wow, geez, maybe Joe had a great question there, because it turned out that a lot of people are being penalized for doing well. The taxes are worse. You're seeing a lot of things right now where they want to penalize people if they don't buy health insurance. So your question at that moment looks like it has come to fruition here now in the last 5 years.
Oh, absolutely. And not to mention just, what yesterday or today, Obama's talking about, implementing new regulations on heavy trucks and forcing the auto industry into, trying to make more trucks, to give you more gas mileage, which is supposedly going to save you more money as he jacks up energy prices. So I don't see how that works. But, I mean, these regulations are killing people. We can't afford the trucks and the cars that they build here in America. And so he's penalizing us in that way. I mean, every time this guy gets a chance to, he ups regulation, ups taxes, and hurts more Americans.
You know, I remember years ago when my mom and dad were bringing me up, and they'd say, you can be whatever you want to be. And I kind of thought of myself, as I look back on it now a little bit more introspectively, as kind of this raw piece of clay that I and my surroundings could, I guess, whittle my way into being something. And now I look at the government, I say, they want to whittle me into something. They want to make me buy a certain thing. You know, you put a tax credit out there if you buy this car, but you don't get a tax credit if you buy this one over here. It's a bigger car, but it eats more gas. I mean, the government is sculpting us into something that maybe we just don't want to be, but we're being forced to become these robotic creatures almost.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that started with our education system. It's continuing with our education, our lack thereof. They don't want people who have independent thought. They don't want people working for themselves and having that sense of confidence and self-esteem, because we're harder to control like that. You know, it's easier to control people that you're, giving money to, giving unemployment benefits that never end to. It's easy to control those people and to continue to get votes. Same thing with the immigration that the Republicans will probably fail on. They're bringing them in because they're both hoping to gather a huge a voting block for the next elections and the next cycles, and ultimately to perpetuate this whole entitlement programs that the government seems hell-bent on building time and time again. And I mean, ultimately it kills America. I mean, the producers stop producing, and even if not all of them stop producing, there's not going to be enough of us producers out there to take care of all these people. It's self-defeating.
Joe, you ran for Congress against Marcy Kaptur this last election cycle, and you were defeated. And a lot of people said, well, he's too radical, he's too this. And yet you're a guy that seems to stand for a lot of the values that the rest of us out here stand for, thus the Joe the Plumber, the regular guy on Main Street here. Can a regular guy on Main Street still get elected in this society?
Not if he wants to maintain his integrity and values. One thing I discovered on the campaign trail, even with the Tea Parties, and I'm not coming down on Tea Parties because I'm very happy with the fact that they're out there working
so
hard.
Am I.
But at the same time, if you disagree in one stance or another stance, then all of a sudden you can become blackballed by your local Tea Party, and that we defeat ourselves. And then you got to go around and kiss all the right butts. And someone like me, I just don't know how to kiss butt. I've never done it. I've always let my work ethic and my drive, promote myself, as opposed to coming around and shaking hands and kissing people's butts. You got to take a lot of guff when you're running for Congress. I mean, you got to sit there and all these different PACs out there now. You have to go and do interviews with them and try to get them to see it your way. And then it all comes down to, do they think you can win? Because if they don't think you can win, then they're not going to give you any money. And then you're sitting there going, okay, how am I supposed to get my message out there? Because the Republican strategists out there, like your Karl Rove, decide, well, he can't win. We're not going to give him any money. We'll just leave that seat to be a Democrat seat. I mean, that's not how it should work.
Yeah, it's all strategy anymore instead of, okay, what about principles? Where do principles leave the building? That you can go out there and stand on principles. People say, but you can't win. Ron Paul can go out and stand for the Constitution, but he's radical and can't win because he stands for the Constitution. I'm sitting back going, huh? What happened here along the way, Joe?
Well, that's actually one of the things I'm talking about these days when I go speak at different events. When did strategy come into right and wrong? We'll do a little bit of wrong here and be able to do greater right there. It doesn't work that way. Once you start doing wrong, you get on a road that you just can't get off of. And, my question to Barack Obama, I was respectful because I had a simple question. Why do you want to penalize my success? And that's what we got to bring things back to. It really is very simple. It's the politicians and the lawyers that want to make it difficult and, make it like it's a magical thing going up on the hill. It's not. It comes down to right and wrong. Regardless of how much you want to rationalize what you're doing, ultimately you're doing wrong or you're doing right. And that's what we got to get back to, the very simple things in life. Taking money from somebody who's working hard and giving to somebody who's not, that is wrong. And you can't cut it out of the way. You can't sit there and say, well, the Christian thing to do. Well, no, the Christian thing to do is to teach the man how to fish and then let him go fish, not to keep stealing my damn fish.
By the way, for a lot of you listening out there, feel free to give us a call, 1-800-357-0910 if you got a question for Joe. He's He'll give it to you direct and straight. I know that for sure. But Joe, one of the things that we talk about all the time is this idea that I think a lot of Americans today, and it's probably our own fault. I mean, we have to take responsibility too. We were all working and stuff. We trusted the government was going to represent us. And we woke up one day and we looked out and we said, whoa, wait a minute, what happened here? This doesn't look like what we sent them there to do. And yet, while we were working, they were also working to create the rules of a game that many don't understand right now and don't know how to get their arms around. And thus, you go one of two ways. You bitch and you moan with nothing really happened, or you walk away and throw your hands up and say, it really doesn't matter. I don't really matter. How do you react to that?
Well, people are frustrated. They don't trust their government. They're living in fear, and that's exactly where the government wants us. Now, I've been, last 5 years, I've always been involved all my life, wanting to know what's going on. That was something my dad raised in me. But as I've been watching Congress and Senate and essentially the hold that they have on the rest of the country, how do we make things happen? How do we actually get Americans back in charge of America? And one thing I've been trying to tell people is, they've forgotten that it's not the United States of Washington, D.C. It's the United States of America, the states. The states control what's going to happen. So ultimately, we need to raise up in our states. We have, I think, 34, 36 red states. We got to give those governors their balls back and actually have them working for us for a change.
Yeah.
And stop letting the federal government say, well, listen, you give us this money, you put this program in place, and we'll give you an extra $400,000, an extra $5 million for schools or roads. The states have to step up and tell the federal government, you're destroying America. And we need to change what's going on in this country.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the other part is we find the Republicans and the Democrats kind of melding into this club where they, at the end of the day, if it looks like, geez, they're kind of invading our sanctum, our inner sanctum here, we've got to stand for the status quo. And that means the only people left that are going to change the rules to this whole thing will be the American people.
Oh, exactly. And that's why you got to get involved locally. I've been involved in my local precinct. I try to encourage people to run. I encourage people to stand firm. I speak very bluntly and never back down on my thoughts or opinions because I want other people to do the same thing. I want them to have that courage and forget the political correctness, forget what their neighbor's going to say about them, because ultimately, if they stand down, if they're neutral, they're on the other side. We're going to lose. And, we can't afford to lose this country. And that's what it comes down to. That's why we keep fighting. That's why you keep talking. That's why you're out there. And, we just need to raise more people. Rush Limbaugh, he encourages a lot of people, but ultimately he only has one vote, just like you, just like me, just like anybody else. That's why we need to raise more leaders out there and get more people encouraged and make those votes count.
Joe, let me bring in a caller. We got another Joe from Dover. And, Joe, you're on the air with Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Joe.
Good morning.
Enjoy listening to you. Yeah, what you just said when you approached President Obama and asked him a straight question he had to answer the truth on, that puts people on the spot. And, to take this country back, we have to do things that are right. Unfortunately, I've said for many, many years, this is like a monopoly game. These guys get up there in Congress. They do what they want to do. They roll the dice. They move us around the board. We might collect $200 when we go past, or ask for us to pay luxury tax. And they make all the rules and regulations. And all we can continually do is try to do the right thing and hold their feet to the fire in the Constitution. I have to laugh that a couple years ago, the Tea Party came on the scene with trying to hold their feet to the fire in the Constitution. And if that was just the one screaming idea that we had, they don't like that. So then every time that one of the representatives don't do everything at 100% of what they think they should do or how they should vote, they just tear down the whole situation. But you're absolutely right, and hang in there. I'm going to get involved in a campaign here locally and write letters to all my clients that I have recommending, they ask me anyhow, who would you vote for? I'm going to start making recommendations based on honesty and integrity and doing the things that we should be doing for the American people, because our representation is getting crazy, and these people are not following the Constitution. It's about time we start making them do that.
Joe, thanks so much.
Excellent. Well, that's another thing we can follow up on, businesses. With the Second Amendment being under attack as much as it is, you've seen businesses standing up, from magazine makers to gun makers saying, well, you know what? We're going to leave your state. You won't sit there and stand up for the Second Amendment. We're going to move our business, which will put, a couple hundred to 1,000 people out of work in your state. We're going to move it down south. businesses need to start standing up, because ultimately the Democrats' way, and quite frankly the Republicans' way sometimes, are destroying businesses and hurting communities. And so businesses need to actually get off the sideline and actually get behind a candidate. Obviously individually is what I'm saying. From the president of the company down to the cashier. If you want that job, then you better start thinking about how you need to vote. And businesses need to get involved and put up billboards and help people and get off that sideline.
Joe, I hear a lot of Republicans say, and I've had senators and representatives on here, not all, but most of them have said, we can't get our message out. Darn it, because the media is on the side of the Democrats and the left and all this kind of stuff, so we really can't get it out. Woe is me. And I said to one day, I said, listen, when are you going to stand up? And when someone says, geez, what about this? And you say, wait a minute, have you asked the other side that? I'm not going to, or when you ask a question, like we saw the president and Romney asked the question in front of Candy Crowley in a debate a few years ago and says, oh, wait a minute, why didn't you take care of things in Libya the way you were supposed to? And Candy Crowley says, well, he did. He said, at that point, Romney should have said, no, he didn't. Let's stop right there. We're not going to another question until I get an answer. Why can't Republicans stand up and do that anymore? Why can't they demand answers and have the guts to do that?
Because they always allow themselves to be put on the defensive. And that's
Great
really
point.
What it comes to. That's what happens. Racism is the perfect example. Oh, you're a racist. And what's the conservative do? 9 out of 10 times he'll turn, he'll duck and walk away, or he'll come back with, I have black friends. I mean, they always allow themselves to be on the defense, and that's got to stop. I actually did a tour on racism a couple of years ago. Me and another black fella running around the Deep South talking about racism. But in reality, we should have been up north talking about racism, because that's truly where I see most of it at anyways.
Well, the idea there, too, is quit apologizing. If you're an honest person, a good person, you're an honest person, a good person. You don't have to go out and declare that to everybody. You're going to do it by your actions. You're going to do it by who you are, right?
Exactly.
We're going to take a quick break, Joe. We're going to come back and get some final thoughts from you. Joe the Plumber, Wurzelbacher, with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. You're welcome to call and ask him a question or give him a thought. 1-800-357-0910 here on the Gary Sutton Show. Back right after this. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. I am Gary Sutton, and we're with Joe the Plumber, Wurzelbacher, who 5 years ago became kind of a famous guy. How have you changed in the last 5 years? Have you changed at all? I mean, how's life changed for you?
No,
I know you love when I ask you that question, but go ahead.
I'm just like any other American out there. I just happen to have a platform every once in a while, and my opinions will get out nationally. But ultimately, I'm trying to make a living. I got an 18-year-old son who just signed up for the Air National Guard. Who'll be leaving for basic training in July. I have an 11-month-old daughter that I'm just having an incredible amount of fun with, watching all over again. And I'm trying to make my bills each and every month.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Republican Party doesn't send me a check every month for being Joe the Plumber. The Koch brothers
Right.
don't even know who the hell I am. And so I'm just trying to make it in life, and and I stand firm on what I believe in. I don't back down, and my family still loves me and respects me, and that's really what I care about. Everybody else can go to hell if they don't like it. That's kind of how I look at things.
Joe.
Hey,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to follow up on that social media thing. The reason why Republicans are so bad when it comes to social media and getting their message out there is because, bottom line, they don't want to go on record. They're politicians.
Yeah.
They're born to lie. And if they go on record, well, the left media will not let it go. Well, you said this. You printed that. You put this in your Facebook. Now, the guys on the left, you're for example, Hillary Clinton. They're going to whitewash Benghazi. They're going to forget
Right.
about it. They're going to make it a little thing. Same thing with Lewinsky and what Bill Clinton did. So the right doesn't want to go on the record, and the left's record is fluid.
Yeah, and don't remember what I said last week. Remember what I said right now. That's
Exactly.
another part. That seems to be, that we have to accept this double standard, and it's never said, but it's unwritten. It's unsaid, and you're supposed to just accept that, and that's the way it is. And like the thing with this Strickland guy, the public records get requested by the Dispatch disclosure that information on Wurzelbacher's driver's license or his sport utility vehicle are pulled from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles database 3 times shortly after the debate you had with the president. And then, as you mentioned, Ohio Attorney General Nancy Rogers The Cuyahoga County Child Support Enforcement Agency and the Toledo Police go out there, and they're the ones assigned to these accounts. So you go, well, wait a second. Why do these people feel like they have to jump in there and help the president out by going out and damaging a regular citizen who has a question?
Well, the funny thing about that is the Attorney General here in Ohio found wrongdoing. And when we took him to court with Judicial Watch came out to represent me. The court came back and said there was no wrongdoing. And it's like, it was pretty black and white and pretty blatant, but they're protecting their own.
Yeah, and it happens also. I think a lot of us really resent the idea that the Republicans and the Democrats, specifically if you look at the Senate, seem to galvanize together when the status quo is somehow threatened by these poor, unwashed common clave out there like you and me.
Well, they don't want to lose their position of power. They don't want to lose their the money. Human nature is the same, from if you're super rich or super poor. You manipulate whatever situation you're in to try to make yourself better. It's the middle-class Americans who work their butts off and try to make their own way in life, who have been supporting this country and have had this country built on their backs. And those are the people that really need to come together and force the issue.
Do you see, we talked about the Tea Party a little bit earlier, and they came out and they made a real dent, I think, in 2010, obviously with the election of that year. And I went to a lot of the Tea Party things, and I was a little bit blackballed also by my local Tea Party because of some of my views, and I called them out on a couple of things, although I think they do great work. I really do. But the point being, is the Tea Party dead, or is that spirit dead, or is it still out there simmering right now, waiting to kind of explode? Your thoughts?
Oh, it's still definitely out there, still underneath the radar. A lot of grassroots, they realize that, you can have only so many parties. You can only throw so many events on the White House lawn until you actually got to get to the trenches and get dirty and start working towards the things that we need to make happen in this country. But on the flip side, the Tea Party, just like, Washington, D.C., you want to make money? Move to Washington, D.C. You can make all kinds of money. And that's what some people, unfortunately, have found out in the Tea Party. And the message, they'll sit there and go rah-rah all day long as long as they're counting the money going to the bank.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of watch out for those movements because, a lot of people are preaching the word, but they're doing it just to make money. Just like your lobbyists, just like some of your political science majors. They don't care if they represent a Republican or Democrat as long as they're getting paid. And so you got to make sure that the people you're working with are actually true and really want to see the mission succeed as opposed to their bank book explode.
Yeah, you don't want to see them in there for some other reason, obviously. And again, you just hit something, Joe, that is so important. And I think you represent that about as well as anybody. Authenticity. I think people are thirsty in this country for someone who's just honest, authentic, real, not fake. Not at the end of the day you're saying, oh, my God, he used all this money to go out and, do this or that. We're thirsty we're dying for it right now, aren't we?
Well, yes and no. Somebody like that scares people because then they have to sit there and take a long, hard look at themselves. And so they don't want to actually, I kind of disagree. I don't know if they say they want someone honest out there, but then it scares them. And I'll take myself as an example. Every reality TV show that's come my way, I've turned down.
Right.
Because and everyone wants to pay me money for something. If I don't agree with it, I don't do it. And I could make a lot of money, but then I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. I wouldn't be able to teach my son or my daughter the things that have real meaning and real value because ultimately I'm going to face my judge.
Yeah, and you basically sold out on what you believed in, and you can't do that. You got to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. Joe, I could always go 3 hours with you, my friend, but always good talking to you, and always a pleasure.
Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys have a great time. And if people want to hear more about me and what I'm doing, they can always go to joeforamerica.com. It's not about left and right. It's about right and wrong.
And don't take any of those stupid reality shows, okay?
Don't worry about that, brother.
Take care, Joe. Thanks again.
Bye.
JoeForAmerica.com, indeed. Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. His one man can make a difference, and he raised the level of conversation there for a while years ago. And I think a lot of people come back since then and say, you know what, that question was pretty good. What's the answer? We're still finding out. Our final quote for today comes from Abraham Lincoln today. He said, I hold that if the Almighty had ever made a set of men that would do all the eating and none of the work, he would have made them with mouths only and no hands. And if he'd ever made another class that he intended should do all the work and no eating, he would have made them with hands only and no mouths. And then finally this, the Lord prefers common-looking people. That's the reason he makes so many of them. Aren't we all? Tomorrow on the Gary Sutton Show, Joel Sears is going to be sitting in for me. We're going to be talking about all the issues of the day that are on your mind. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I've had a great time with you. I really have. Hope you enjoyed Joe. He's going to be up on Facebook.com/910WSBA in a little bit. Hope you all have a great day. And we'll be back with you tomorrow here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. It's high noon.